We subject ourselves to all kinds of danger and intimidation and coercion and harassment. I think we cannot stop, because if we give up, then again you will be rewarding those who are doing these things and depriving our country of a better future. So yes, we continue doing what we can. Those of us who care keep trying to make our positions known. We speak out, we issue position papers, we oppose transactions that we consider anomalous. We applaud when we think the government is doing good things. By the way, let me point out that this is precisely why the Makati Business Club is as it is. The Makati Business Club was organized precisely to speak on national issues that affect our lives beyond what is just business and the economy. People sometimes criticize the Makati Business Club and say, hey, you're supposed to be a business club. Why do you talk about political issues? We're a business club because our members are from the business sector. But we were organized precisely to speak our minds on issues that affect all of us. And it is precisely to give a voice to business that we were organized about 30 years ago. And we've tried to live up to that mission. And this is why we continue making our voices heard. It's not comfortable fighting Malacanang. It's not comfortable fighting the government. It's better to be friendly and to be invited to state dinners and to Malacanang meetings and to, foreign trips of the president, etc., which, by the way, we're not invited to. It's easier to be friendly with the powerful. And we're not looking for enemies, but we just have concluded that we can't tolerate these things, and therefore we speak out. But there's a cost to this, and I guess we just have to stand. We just have to watch out for ourselves. But I guess in doing this, we hope that, number one, we're conveying the message to our people that at least there are some segments of the business community who believe in these things and are willing to stand up against these anomalies, these things that are taking place in our society, and are willing to put their necks on the block for it. But we're also hoping that by setting the example, I hope that others will also do the same. Of course, there are many in the academic sector that I look up to as people who speak their minds, and I admire them, and I really take inspiration from them as well. So maybe by joining hands, we will gain strength and gain more moral courage to do the things we need to do. And this is partly why I'm reaching out to you today and saying, let's get together on this fight against corruption, because we can't do it ourselves. We really need to put all of our efforts together because it's such a massive effort that we need to undertake.
Thank you. We have a question again from UP Mindanao. Professor Alabado.
Good afternoon. This is Prof. Luz Gomez from the School of Management.
Okay.
Education and poverty are directly related, such that in many rural areas, at least in Mindanao, poverty is the major reason why children do not attend school. They are asked to help in farm work rather than go to school. How do you think can the business sector realistically help address this very real relationship between education and poverty, particularly in Mindanao?
Well, precisely that is why Philippine Business for Education was formed. We feel that the state of education in this country is really quite dismal. There are all kinds of data available to show that our kids are really very poorly prepared, certainly for employment or even for moving up from high school to college. And rather than just complain about it, we felt that the time had come to try and do something about it. So PB Ed has really two sides to it. One is on the side of policies. We have asked that we be heard as the voice of business so that our viewpoint can be taken into account when decisions are made. And this is why we've tried to identify what are the factors that we think will have the greatest impact on the quality of education in our country. And that is where those main issues that I spoke of earlier have come from. The quality of teachers, the length of the education cycle, the amount of resources being devoted to education. There are many, many other issues, of course. But we definitely believe that education and poverty are tied to each other, and that the ultimate solution to poverty is really education. And this is why we have tried to get involved. The other side of Philippine Business for Education is the philanthropic side of business. Something like, what is the number? About 1.5 billion, is it about 2 billion pesos a year is spent by private business foundations on education-related projects year after year. But we observe that there are all kinds of projects going on, from putting computers in every classroom, to supplying desks, to building schoolhouses, to giving scholarships for teachers, giving scholarships for students, etc. We thought that maybe it would be better if we do an inventory of all of these projects and try to assess them in terms of their impact on the quality of education, and see which ones of these are making the greatest impact, and therefore should deserve more concentrated support from the business community. So that's the other side of our program. We have identified several projects. One of them is the 1,000 Teachers program. The other one is this project we call 5775, where we're trying to change the grade of our kids who are in school from the 57 that they're now more or less making to 75, which is the passing grade. Actually, in high school, I think the grade was 44, but we couldn't do 44 to 44, so which shows 57, 75 to make it more dramatic. But it's really just a catchphrase to say that we're interested in transforming. And the way we're doing that is we're encouraging communities to get involved in education. So the local governments, the school administration, the principals, the teachers, and the parents. There is a model of Sinergia, which is doing great work throughout the country, and we're encouraged by the results. And also this group called the Worldwide People Power Foundation, under Mrs. Eggy Apostol, are doing a lot of the spade work on these projects. But basically, it's involving communities in uplifting the quality of education in various communities. And so far, the results are quite encouraging. And then it's arming the kids with workbooks so that they have things that they can bring home from school and work with even at home. So these are some of the initiatives. I know that these may sound like small steps, but I believe that even if the steps may seem small, as I said earlier, if more of us get involved in trying to do what we can, then hopefully these efforts will gain momentum and will gain in terms of their impact on the overall problem.
Thank you. We are now ready for the last two questions. One from UP Baguio. Please come in. Professor Lorelie Mendoza.
Good afternoon, Mr. Del Rosario. This is the question from UP Baguio. The problem of corruption is something that afflicts not only government service, but also business practices. One may even argue that certain business practices, or perhaps business organizations, encourage corrupt practices. Can you tell us if there are existing efforts among business organizations to punish businessmen or business organizations that do corrupt practices? Thank you.
That's a very valid question and a very important one. I think the main response I would have is our continued agitation for the government to enforce the laws and regulations of our country. As I said earlier, if crime is rewarded, if crime pays, then more and more will engage in crime. I think while there is a role for the business community to play as well, and let me see if I can get to that later, I think the onus in this particular case really lies with the enforcement of laws that are there. And I guess the onus, to my mind, really is on the administration and government to show that it does not tolerate these practices, so that those who are even thinking of engaging in corrupt practices will hopefully be discouraged from it. But I guess the question should also be raised as to what businesses themselves can do to discourage their friends in the business community from engaging in these practices. We have all sorts of efforts related to sound corporate governance, all kinds of scorecards, all kinds of things we do to try and improve the quality of our governance, which includes, I guess, limiting the level of corruption. But I will be the first to admit that these have really not been very successful in the sense that, for example, there was one effort made by one business organization to try and encourage the banks not to look at second and third sets of books when they're lending, when establishing credit facilities for borrowers. In other words, force the borrowers to use the financial statements that they present to the BIR for tax purposes, to use only those financial statements for purposes of seeking credit from financial institutions. Unfortunately, the response of many banks at that point was, that's quite unrealistic because, first of all, it's not our job to collect taxes, it's the job of the government. And secondly, why should we turn our backs when these are credit-worthy organizations? And our job is really to know what their real credit standing is rather than the credit standing that would appear from the set of books that they submit to the BIR. That's the kind of effort from time to time that we try to undertake among ourselves. It has been lacking. It does deserve to be looked at and become a stronger effort. So I accept the reality that that could stand significant improvement. Although I still insist that so much would be gained if only the laws that are already in place would simply be enforced. Because I really think that at the end of the day, there is nothing business executives would fear more than the possibility of going to jail. I think we have seen very senior business executives, heads of corporate conglomerates, be indicted, be convicted, go to jail in places like Korea, for example, or in Taiwan. Why can't we do the same? I think it will go a long, long way in curbing corporate corruption in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one last question from Diliman. The lady, please.
Sir, this is Carmelita Ruiz from UNESCO. I've been an alumni of this university as well as a faculty. My question has to do with my experience also with teaching with other schools, including your favorite, De La Salle University. We have been accused as faculty and students of being always in an ivory tower, in spite of the data bank of research of these peoples that we are. Could it be because this university doesn't have those programs of outreach like La Salle, like they go out of the way to go to the hinterlands, to the barrios during their summer term? That was also true of my other university, University of Navarre. They don't just go to just any barrio, they even go to other countries, even African countries, to help the people and impart their knowledge during summer. Could it be? Or am I speaking only from a biased point of view?
No, I think that's a very valid point. I think exposing students to the reality of what really is taking place in society at large, particularly in our very depressed communities, it's a very, very valuable learning experience. In fact, at the end of this month, again, my favorite school, La Salle, is conducting a sort of a soul-searching session where we will try to, I guess, come up with very specific programs. And among other things, there are one of the main issues we want to develop has to do with our belief that our students should be inculcated with